It's a tale as old as time itself. The woods are beautiful until night falls, until you're not sure what's out there lurking in the woods. But what if what's waiting for you is smaller in stature? Children abused and left for dead, who've decided to find their own way into legend.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real, based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
When it comes to stories about Ohio in particular, I've always been fascinated by the idea of the Melonheads, especially considering they're talked about in Ohio and Michigan, but also Connecticut. A strange combination. Michigan and Ohio share lots of folklore in common, but not so much Connecticut. But there's a lot to this story, to its origins, and to how likely it is to be true. And we're going to take a look at that and see if we can't shine a light on some of these shadows. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app and get cozy, because when we return, we're diving deep into the Melonheads. In the dense forests of Kirtland, Ohio, whispers of strange creatures with grotesquely swollen heads have haunted locals for generations. These beings, known as the Melonheads, are said to emerge under the cover of night, chasing those who wander too far into the woods and lurking by the roadside to strike fear into unsuspecting motorists. Their distorted, childlike forms have become the stuff of nightmares, though no photographs or physical evidence have ever confirmed their existence. The legend's roots trace back to a mysterious figure named Dr. Crow, a man whose name carries both sympathy and terror. Some say he was a kind-hearted physician who sheltered children suffering from a rare medical condition, shielding them from a cruel world. Others believe he was a twisted scientist who performed gruesome experiments, turning innocent lives into deformed creatures. When his house burned to the ground, the children vanished into the forest, where they are believed to remain to this day, watching, waiting. The tales have endured, passed down through hushed voices and chilling online accounts, yet, despite the lack of proof, the fear is real. Are these stories merely the product of overactive imaginations, or could something far more disturbing be hiding in the shadows of Kirtland's woods? In American folklore of Ohio, Michigan, and Connecticut, the Melonheads are described as small, humanoid beings with unusually large, bulbous heads. These mysterious figures are said to dwell in secluded areas, emerging from their hidden places to attack unsuspecting individuals. Their presence has become a source of fear and intrigue for those familiar with the legend. While the details of their appearance and behavior vary across different versions of the story, the image of these creatures with their oversized heads remains a common thread in the accounts shared across these 3 states. Reports from those who claim to have encountered the Melonheads often describe unsettling experiences. Witnesses speak of children-like figures with grotesquely swollen heads seen darting through the forest at night. Some tell of being chased by these beings, while others recount seeing them suddenly appear beside remote roads, startling motorists as they pass through the dark, wooded areas. The fear instilled by these sightings lingers long after the encounters, leaving those affected with questions about what they truly witnessed in the shadows. Despite the numerous tales that have circulated over the years, no concrete evidence has ever been produced to confirm the existence of the Melonheads. There are no photographs, no videos, no physical proof to validate the claims made by witnesses. Yet the legend endures, fueled by the stories passed down through generations. The absence of evidence has not deterred believers. Rather, it is added to the mystery, with some convinced that the beings are simply too elusive to be captured by modern technology. One explanation that has been suggested is the belief in what some call the Melonheads curse. According to this belief, the being's existence is tied to a supernatural or malevolent force that shields them from detection. This curse is thought to be the reason behind the lack of tangible proof and the frightening experiences reported by those who cross paths with the Melonheads. The idea of a curse further amplifies the fear and uncertainty surrounding the legend, making it something more than just unusual people hiding in the woods. However, the true origins of the Melonheads remain unclear, as different versions of the legend offer conflicting accounts. Some stories suggest they were once human children who were subjected to cruel experiments, leading to their grotesque appearance. Others claim they were abandoned and left to fend for themselves in the wilderness, their deformities resulting from years of inbreeding and isolation. Each version contributes to the legend's complexity, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. So who are the Melonheads, really? Did they ever truly exist? These questions continue to haunt those drawn to the eerie tales from Ohio, Michigan, and Connecticut. While skeptics dismiss the stories as mere folklore, others remain convinced that something sinister lurks in the depths of those dark forests. Whether real or imagined, the Melonheads have carved a permanent place in the legends of these regions. There are multiple versions of the story surrounding the Melonheads, but many of them center around a figure known as Dr. Crow. In some tellings, his name appears as Crowe, Crowe, or Krohe, or Kroh, or sometimes he's referred to as Dr. Melonhead. The legend is indeed particularly associated with Kirtland, a small town in Lake County, Ohio, home to approximately 10,000 residents. Mr. Crow's role in the story varies, depending on the version. Some portray him as a benevolent caregiver, while others depict him as a more sinister figure. Regardless of his nature, his connection to the Melonheads remains at the heart of the Ohio folktale. According to one account, Dr. Crow was commissioned by the federal government shortly after World War II to care for children afflicted with hydrocephalus, a rare medical condition that causes the accumulation of fluid in the brain, resulting in abnormally large heads. These children, suffering from both physical deformities and social rejection, were placed under Crow's care. The story goes he operated a small institution on his property, hidden deep in the woods, where he not only provided medical treatment, but also offered them a home away from the cruelty of the outside world. In this particular version, Dr. Crow is seen as a compassionate figure He took in the children who had been cast aside by society and treated them with kindness. The government is said to have discreetly delivered these children to him under the cover of night, trusting that he would give them the care they so desperately needed. Crow dedicated his life to their well-being, working tirelessly to improve their quality of life while seeking a cure or treatment for their condition. Isolated from the community, the children relied solely on Crow for support. He studied their condition with the hope of discovering a medical breakthrough that might one day reverse their suffering. His work was driven by a genuine desire to help those whom society had abandoned. However, tragedy ultimately struck. Crow died of natural causes before he could find the cure he had worked so diligently to uncover. Without their protector and caregiver, the children were left to fend for themselves. In some versions of the tale, his death coincided with a catastrophic fire that engulfed his home. The blaze consumed the house and claimed the life of Dr. Crow, leaving the children both orphaned and homeless. With no one left to care for them, they scattered into the dense forest surrounding Kirtland. Stripped of their shelter and isolated from society, they are said to have adapted to life in the woods, surviving as best they could. Their haunting appearance and fearful existence in the wilderness became the foundation of the Melonhead legend. In the more widely known and disturbing versions of the Melonhead story, Dr. Crow is not remembered as a kind-hearted physician, but rather as a malevolent figure whose dark experiments left a permanent stain on the forests around Kirtland. This version strips away any sense of compassion and replaces it with horror. Crow is depicted as a ruthless scientist who treated the children not as patients in need of help, but as subjects for his twisted medical experiments. His home, hidden deep within the woods, is described as less of a sanctuary and more of a secret laboratory where unspeakable acts took place. In this telling, Crow's methods were cruel and unnatural. He's said to have acquired children through various means. Some accounts claim he was supplied by the government under the guise of medical research, while others suggest he kidnapped or purchased them in secret. Once under his control, the children were subjected to horrific procedures that altered their appearance and left them permanently disfigured. The most notorious claim is that Crow injected their heads with water, causing their skulls to swell to unnatural proportions. Over time, their heads grew grotesquely large and smooth, while their bodies became weak and misshapen. While some versions agree that the children initially suffered from hydrocephalus, a condition that causes fluid buildup in the brain, Crow's actions only worsened their condition. He's rumored to have deliberately increased the amount of fluid in their heads, stretching their skulls even further, beyond all natural limits. The experiments left the children in agony, their bodies deteriorating under the weight of their swollen heads. The result was a group of grotesque, hairless beings who bore little resemblance to ordinary children, beings who would later become known as the Melonheads. The torment and abuse at Crow's hands eventually led to a violent turning point. Overwhelmed by years of pain and suffering, the children are said to have risen up against their tormentor. They attacked Crow in a final act of desperation and revenge, bringing an end to his cruel reign. After killing him, they set fire to his home as well as the makeshift institution that had imprisoned them for so long. The flames consumed everything: the building, Crow's body, and any physical evidence of the horrific experiments that had taken place within those walls. With their captor dead and their prison destroyed, the children fled into the surrounding forests, seeking refuge among the trees. Though free, they were permanently scarred, both physically and emotionally. Unable to reintegrate into society because of their horrifying appearance and lack of socialization, they became reclusive and feral. Over time, they adapted to life in the wilderness, learning to survive away from human eyes. The isolation only fueled their legend, as their rare sightings by locals sparked fear and speculation about what truly lurked in the woods. To this day, the area around Kirtland, particularly along Wisner Road and into neighboring Chardon Township, is said to be haunted by the presence of the Melonheads. Those who travel the dark, wooded paths at night have reported brief, terrifying glimpses of small, malformed figures with bulbous heads darting between trees. Some stories even suggest that the Melonheads turned to cannibalism, with chilling claims that they prey on stray animals or, more disturbingly, human infants. Whether fact or folklore, the tale of Dr. Crow and the Melonheads remains one of Ohio's most enduring and unsettling legends. As the legend persisted over time, it evolved into a tale not only of survival, but of an unnatural lineage hidden within the forests near Kirtland. Those who escaped the burning orphanage were said to have adapted to their harsh environment, finding ways to endure despite their deformities. As the years turned into decades, these survivors allegedly gave birth to children of their own. These offspring inherited the same grotesque physical abnormalities: enlarged bulbous heads and frail bodies, as well as the mental scars afflicted upon their parents. This new generation grew up secluded from society, knowing only the shadows of the forest and the stories passed down regarding the cruelty of the outside world. With their isolation came a growing resentment toward humans. The Melonheads were believed to view outsiders as threats to their very existence, fostering a deep hatred for anyone who dared to enter their territory. Local tales described eerie encounters with these beings, sightings of small, misshapen figures lurking at the edges of roads, peering out from behind trees, or chasing travelers through the darkness. Whispers circulated about attacks on those who wandered too far into the woods, with some disappearing without a trace. There were even accounts suggesting the Melonheads had resorted to stealing livestock, pets, and in the most disturbing stories, children, taking them back to their hidden dens for food. Another variation of the legend added an emotional twist to the story of Dr. Crow. In this version, the doctor was not entirely alone. He was married to a kind-hearted woman, a woman who treated the children with gentleness and compassion. She became a mother figure to them, offering comfort in an otherwise cold and brutal environment. Her presence was said to be the only source of warmth in their lives. However, one fateful night, a violent argument erupted between Crow and his wife. In the struggle, she fell and hit her head on a cabinet, resulting in her death. Whether it was an accident or something more sinister remains unclear, but the children believed Crow was responsible. Grief turned to fury as the children, devastated by the loss of the only person who had cared for them, turned on Crow. Overwhelmed by their rage, they attacked him with a viciousness that matched the pain he had inflicted upon them over the years. Once Crow lay dead, the children set his house and institution ablaze. The fire consumed everything: the building, their captors' bodies, and any traces of the horrors that unfolded behind its walls. With their home destroyed and their caretaker gone, as well as their abuser, the children retreated into the dense forest, where they would remain hidden from the outside world. Though the story of the Melonheads began as a local tale whispered among residents, it gained wider recognition with the rise of the internet. Websites like Creepy Cleveland and Dead Ohio became hubs for those intrigued by the legend. People shared personal experiences, alleged sightings, and theories about what really happened in the woods of Kirtland. Each account seemed to add new details, further blurring the line between fact and fiction. The legend's eerie appeal also caught the attention of filmmakers. In 2010, the movie Legend of the Melonheads was released, drawing inspiration from the Ohio tales and other folklore from the area. The story continued to weave itself into horror culture. In 2018, the anthology film The Field Guide to Evil featured a chilling segment inspired by the Melonheads, telling the tale of a boy who was taken into the woods and transformed into one of the grotesque beings. More recently, in 2024, the film The Melonheads' House of Crow revisited the dark legend, further solidifying its place in urban folklore. Despite the growing popularity of these stories, historians and researchers have found no credible evidence to support the existence of Dr. Crow, his institution, or the Melonheads. No records of such a facility or any missing children match the details of the tale. To this day, the legend remains just that, a haunting story, passed down through generations, keeping the woods of Kirtland obscured by more questions than answers. In the end, the Melonheads remain shrouded in mystery, its roots tangled somewhere between folklore and fear. While Dr. Crow and his alleged experiments were never proven to have existed, the stories of deformed children lurking in the forests near Kirtland, Ohio, have persisted for generations. The fear they inspire has extended beyond the local communities, captivating horror enthusiasts and fueling internet folklore. Yet, for those who claim to have seen the Melonheads, the terror is all too real, leaving them to wonder what truly hides in the shadows. Whether the tale is fact, fiction, or something in between, it leaves an unsettling question. How much of what we fear is imagined, and how much of that fear, covered by shadow, masked by the sound of wind cutting through the trees, might just be waiting for us, just beyond our field of view? Terrifying and True is narrated by Enrique Couto. It's executive produced by Rob Fields, Mark Shields, and Bobbletopia.com. It's produced by Dan Wilder with original music by Ray Mattis. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. And if you want to support us directly for as little as $1 a month, simply go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. Your support helps us keep the podcast going and growing. And speaking of, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their name at the end of the show. And they are Jessica Fuller, Johnny Nix, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Brent McCullough, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you right here next time on Terrifying and True on Weekly Spooky.